Folks, if you're just joining us today, Anna Porter is joining us with her new book, The Ghosts of Europe. Now, Anna Porter, of course, was here, just about a year ago, Anna. You know that? We were discussing Katzner's Train. I'm glad you're back with a new book. And as always with any Anna Porter book, it is exquisitely researched and exquisitely written. The words, you're very welcome. You're an amazing writer. You're one of Canada's best, without a doubt. I'm going to start off the show because I think this quote from the book encompasses what you've gone through. And I should tell the folks what the book's about first. That would be a good idea. Anna took a journey to Central Europe. Of course, communism has fallen, or has it? The old ways have given way to the new ways, or have they? And this is what Anna has found out. The research in this book, folks, is pretty revealing, and it's pretty unnerving at the same time. Just let me read this quote. Jigorif Mizannikov, who works for the Institute of Public Affairs, talks of the nostalgia for the communist regime when there was guaranteed work for most of the people and social assistance for those in need. There is a lost generation who do not feel they need what the future offers. They need neither NATO nor the European Union. They are disappointed with the trade-offs of democracy. So that's chilling in itself. But it is an old generation. The young, however, and here's where the hope comes in, did not experience communism and do not long to be ruled by dictators. For them, a nation is a political framework, not an homogeneous block of people who all believe in the same gods, the same cultural legacies. It is eventually the young who will write the history of communism. Perhaps it no longer belongs to those who lived it. That's beautiful writing to begin with. Can we talk about that idea of the old generation that is kind of rejecting democracy but still holds power, still wields that repressive power?
Well, the old generation really is in 2 or 3 categories, but the 2 that are most obvious when wandering around Central Europe and listening to people and asking them questions, there is a category of people who have not really benefited from the changes. Often there are people whose skill set don't seem to be of necessity to today's world, on the one hand, and on the other hand, there are people who suffered under communism and felt that they were entitled to more than what they received once that system was over. If you spent a year or 2 in jail, if your children were deprived of the kind of education that you saw party members' children were entitled to, then you're resentful that in this new democratic world that you now all inhabit, the streets are still not paved with gold, and all those opportunities that you had hoped would come your way are not coming your way. So there is that whole range of resentment. And on the other hand, the children of the old, what I called nomenclatura, the people who ran things under the communists, they were in the right places at the right time. They had learned economics. They had gone to school outside of the country. They spoke languages. And when the changes occurred in 1989, 1990, they were ready to take advantage of this shiny new world. And the older people, this is the children, but the older people were there to grab the spoils, which were often actually quite attractive. The little baubles of a company here, a company there, privatization, housing complexes, and those connections that the old bureaucrats under the communist regimes had developed, the connections amongst themselves, they outlasted the regime change. So there is all this happening. There's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and there is some nostalgia for the certainties of the past. It wasn't great, but it was at least certain, and yes, you were poor, but so was your neighbor. So you didn't have to actually look at your neighbor suddenly succeeding in having a shiny new car and a lovely new home and sending his kids kids off to England to be educated, he was as poor as you were. You could all stand in line together for bread and clothes. So the change has brought with it both the blessings and the curses of capitalism. And this is a very complicated and complex place where it's not I mean, there are no easy answers to anything. There never are. I'm always suspicious of easy answers. Chances are that they are absolutely no good. But the resentments and the anger of the underclass is palpable. I mean, in some countries, I think it's potentially very dangerous.
Folks, our guest this afternoon, Anna Porter. The book is called The Ghosts of Europe, Journeys Through Central Europe's Troubled Past and Uncertain Future. And as with any Anna Porter book, it is extremely, extremely well written. We're talking today about Central Europe of the past versus Central Europe of the future, perhaps, and where it is right now in that transformation. Whether it will make the transformation completely to a Western-style democracy, or whether it may hang right where it is now, kind of stagnant between the two. Anna, you write also in the book, democracy is a hard sell. Whenever I see that, I think automatically of the Middle East. And I never thought that Central Europe, it would be a hard sell because they're surrounded by democracies. And democracy is kind of not right in their face, but it is in the peripherals. But yet you write it's a hard sell. Why is it a hard sell? It's
a hard sell because of the potential inequalities. It's not so much a hard sell in itself, it's a hard sell coupled with capitalism. And it's also a hard sell because we've done such a lousy job of promoting and selling it. I don't believe democracy is exportable like a grain or exotic fruit. Democracy has to be desired by the people to whom we are promoting democracy. And it's democracy, when you look at it, it's a wonderful thing. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, except that we who live in democratic societies do such a lousy job of being passionate promoters of what we enjoy ourselves. When talking with people who have suffered for believing in freedom of speech and movement, people who were jailed, people whose families were deprived of opportunity, people who, some cases I talked to people whose parents were never seen again, but they really were prepared to sacrifice. And I think a lot of us in the West, because we take it for granted, because it's there, and, whatever. I mean, let's consider our, elections. We often don't even bother to vote. But when we go to these countries, we have an opportunity to be spokesmen for what we fundamentally believe is a great system of government, where you can't say what you believe and you're not jailed for it. When if you can get a flight to take you anywhere in the world, you can leave the country. You're not immediately criminalized for wishing to leave, where you don't have to worry that possibly your neighbor is recording what you say and is reporting it to the government, because you're pretty sure the government actually really doesn't care what you say in your own home. And your neighbors, may be curious about what you're saying, but it's certainly not of any financial value to your neighbors. So living in a free society is an extraordinary and wonderful thing, and we've not done a good enough job of selling it. And yes, I do to answer your sort of earlier question. I do believe that the hope in Central Europe, in Eastern Europe, is in the young. I think a lot of the young people, they're not as engaged with history. They didn't live through communism, so they really haven't suffered under it. But they are enjoying their new cell phones and their VCRs and whatever it is they've got, and they're enjoying freedom of movement, and they're not about to give it up to become what they call over there Homo Sovieticus. And Homo Sovieticus is a throwback to the old system. And you do remember how, the old Marxists, the communists, they are such passionate believers in their utterly lousy system Well, we have to be more passionate about ours.
Precisely. And, I can understand the allure of communism. I mean, you're guaranteed employment. The social network is there for you, but it builds complacency. You certainly don't see a lot of original ideas emanating from that type of stifling system. Everybody just sort of follows each other in some kind of dark drizzle, day-to-day drizzle. Folks, we're speaking with Anna Porter today. The Ghosts of Europe, Journeys Through Central Europe's Troubled Past and Uncertain Future is the name of her book. You remember from last year at the www.Brent Holland show, just check the archives, we did a wonderful show on her other book called Katzner's Train, which was the bestseller. Let's go back into it a little bit. One of the things that I found most alarming, and I find really disturbing, especially in this day and age, is the rise of anti-Semitism. Once again, it's rearing its ugly head. And I fear every day, Anna, and it's kind of a mantra for me at this point. I feel like I'm battling in the media anyways, I feel like I'm battling the tide. I fear the Shoah may happen again, maybe perhaps not in an industrialized way, but certainly the amount of anti-Semitism globally is alarming.
Yes, I agree with you. In the countries where I've been, really it is not worse than it is in the West. For example, in Poland, where I spent a great deal of time, the Poles are trying to deal with those ghosts in their past. There's a nostalgia for the time when there were a lot of Jews living in Poland. The annual Singer festivals are astonishing. I honestly encourage you to go and have a look, because if nothing else, you'll be as flabbergasted as I was. I mean, to see thousands of Poles, non-Jewish Poles, dressed up in as what they think might be, shtetl-style Jewish clothing. And
yeah, that was beautifully written by yourself in there. That was just beautifully written.
But it's all true. But also, I mean, that's on the humorous side, but I am very encouraged by this new museum, which is going to be built in Warsaw on the site of the administration building of what was once the Warsaw Ghetto. I think it's encouraging that they are facing these ghosts, that they are talking about it, that they're dealing with it. Much more encouraging than in Hungary, where there's still denial that anything was ever done. Whatever happened was obviously the victim's fault. It's not a huge, but it is. There's a percentage of people in that country who seem to have figured out a way to blame the Jews for their own extermination. The old, double-edged sword. On the one hand, of course, they, ruled the world, and in as much as they ruled the world, they kind of deserve what they got. I mean, it's mind-boggling that you could believe on the one hand that they ran everything and ruled the world, and on the other hand, isn't that extraordinary? 400,000 went to the gas chambers. There's not a lot of logic or thoughtfulness among people who are in this category of vicious anti-Semite, and it is a minority.
How do they view Israel? Is it mixed?
Mixed. I mean, the same as anywhere else. Christina Morvay, a stellar member of the Jobbik party, and her confreres believe that Israel wishes to take over Hungary.
Oy.
So yeah, they have plans. They want to move there and own it. Like, it's silly.
I agree with you. I was in New York 3 weeks ago at a wonderful conference with some peace laureates. And one of the questions from the audience towards Shirin Ebadi, because Shirin Ebadi, folks, for those of you that don't know, won the Nobel Peace Prize 2003 for human rights, supporting human rights inside of Iran. She is now exiled from the country, living outside. But one of the questions posed to her was that it was Israel's fault for the human rights inside of Iran, because they have, and I'll try and paraphrase it here, essentially Israel has stolen the spotlight by keeping the spotlight on nuclear weapons instead of human rights. Oh yeah. But this was the mantra. Again, I come back to this, and this is why I'm afraid, because no matter what's wrong with the world, let's blame Israel, and by extension, of course, the Jews. Yeah, very scary stuff when you get into that type of mindset. And these are intelligent people, and I don't mean Shirin Ebadi. She denied that completely. But this was one of the questions posed from a legitimate journalist in New York City. Scary stuff, huh?
posed by a working journalist or somebody posing as a journalist who has a Twitter account. I don't believe that people who actually think and read and have the intelligence to understand something about the world around them could seriously say something so utterly stupid. So I have no patience whatsoever with anti-Semites.
Me either, and I get chastised for it all the time whenever I do a show supporting the truth behind Israel, and I don't mean to get off topic. Our guest this afternoon, of course, is Anna Porter, and we're speaking about her brand new book called The Ghosts of Europe. Get the book. Any Anna Porter book, you're guaranteed a wonderful read. She is an exquisite writer, probably one of Canada's top 10, I would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When anybody embarks on such a profound journey as this, they are always moved by something specifically. What was it for you?
I was very, very moved by the monument to the shipyard workers in Gdansk, in Poland, the port city where solidarity began. I was really moved by the monument, and I was moved by the plaques commemorating those who had been killed. I was moved by meeting Adam Michnik, who really is one of the most extraordinary people I've ever met. He's a Polish intellectual. He was imprisoned for voicing his opinions, for writing and publishing critical comments about the government. He spent 6 years in prison. So he is now the editor-in-chief of Holland's largest newspaper, and he's a philosopher. I was just enormously moved by meeting somebody who is a hero of mine and listening to his conviction that things were going to be okay. Michnik's got lots of reasons to be fretting about Poland and some of the opinions expressed on one of the Polish radio stations, which was attacked repeatedly for being Jewish. But he has enormous patience, and he's a true philosopher king, extraordinary man. I was very, very moved meeting him. I was moved going to, sorry about this being a Jewish topic, but I was really moved in Prague going to the synagogues, what is left of what was once a great area of the city where there was vibrant Jewish life. And what's left is really a monument to a vanished people, which is, of course, as you may or may not know, what Hitler had in mind for that very, very, very same area, because there weren't going to be any Jewish people left. And walking around that area and seeing what there was and trying to imagine it when it was alive and excited and people were there, and now the rabbi has a lot of difficulties finding enough people for a minyan. For sure, plus the history of it, and then looking at the names on the wall of one of the synagogues, you can see the names of the people who were killed, mostly in Auschwitz. I found that really, really moving. I mentioned to you about the Springer Festival. I love them. God bless them. It's wonderful. A whole lot of people want to be happy to be Jewish, and they're not Jewish. I think that's great. On a much sadder note, I found it very, very difficult to look at the remnants of blood on the ground where the little 5-year-old boy had been killed in a spate of murders of gypsies in Hungary. I found that very distressing, and just the whole thing about that radical, violent nastiness, that racist propaganda that would encourage a group of mindless guys to think that it's okay to go out and kill is terrifying.
Where does that mentality come from? Because that is a mentality that's global. We think of Rwanda, the Holocaust, and so many other atrocities. Where does this mindset emanate from?
The phrase was the banality of evil, but evil is often actually not just banal, but also quite dumb. Unfortunately, it can be effective. Where it comes from, it's I think we all carry a germ with us, and in some people it takes over their entire bodies and minds, and it creates the catastrophe that you mentioned in Rwanda. When I wrote my last book, I was actually hoping, I was looking for explanations. That very question you asked me. I was trying to understand how it is possible for a guy to wake up in the morning and put on his, his suit, his shoes, his whatever, his boots, and say, kiss his wife goodbye, kiss his kids, whatever, go off and murder women and children, and then come home and listen to a bit of Beethoven. I never understood it. I still don't understand it. I don't know how it's possible. I just don't.
I'm not sure I want to understand it. When I was studying Torah with Rabbi New in the Montreal Torah Center, he was saying when Mashiach finally comes down, because folks, Jewish people believe that the Messiah has still yet to come, and he will come. He was saying that when Mashiach does come, he's got a lot to answer for. And I'm in full agreement with him, because the atrocities, it makes you wonder why God made us at all. I don't get it.
I don't get it. And I clearly, nor do you. I just don't understand it, but it's there. And this part of the world where I was traveling and listening to people talk, this is where the Holocaust was perpetrated, and it is in villages and towns in these countries where people actually, took part in stuffing their neighbors into boxcars destined for Auschwitz, or worse, they watched a few kill their neighbors. The village of town, actually, of Jedwabne in Poland. Have you read the book by Jan Gross?
No, I haven't read it, but I'm going to.
I recommend it to you. It's quite an extraordinary book. It's about this town and how one part of the population set out one morning to kill the other part of the population. And they did, brutally and without second thought, and they moved into the homes now vacated by those people they have killed. It's a heartrending and horrific story. Are you familiar with the Kilter stories?
I apologize, I am not.
It's probably okay, because you'll sleep better at that. During the night.
Oh my God.
Kilters where returning Holocaust survivors were killed by people in the town. They were hoping to try to have another life, and yes, these things are much discussed in Poland, and that's healthy. They analyze, they discuss, and was it simply greed, which is one of the kind of favorite answers, that it was just people who had moved into the apartments, the homes owned by and taken over the businesses and small shops or whatever of the returning survivors were not willing to give up whatever they had. So it seemed to be a nice thing to just kill. Greed is, I don't know, I find even that to be somewhat inexplicable. But greed can be a form of evil. Yes, well, I still have trouble sleeping nights, having read and heard some of the stories. But you mentioned my previous book,
Katzer's Train.
And so many of the people I interviewed are now dead. Holocaust survivors are running out of time, and that's sad. That's very sad, because those stories, the stories they tell, are important stories to hear, and as there are fewer and fewer of them talking, a lot of people are not going to be reached by those stories, and history can. I really believe knowing history helps.
Absolutely. And the more we talk about it, and by the way, you never have to apologize for talking about the Holocaust or anything quote-unquote Jewish, not on this show.
Oh, maybe you'd had enough of the topic. When I'm giving a speech, I say, look, this is not a story in which there's a lot of laughs. I'd like to tell a couple of jokes just to loosen up the audience, but the topic is kind of horrific. My new book is less horrific. I keep hearing from people who are the children, grandchildren now, even grandchildren of Kastner's Train and survivors from Austria, which was another effort of Kastner's. That is encouraging.
Folks, our guest this afternoon, Anna Porter, we're talking about her new book, The Ghosts of Europe, and we're also talking about her previous book, the award-winning bestseller, Katzner's Train. Anna, do you fear that fever will ever take hold of the people again? And you had said that the vast majority of anti-Semitism is in the minority, kind of the way it is around the world. Do you fear that fever could take place again and we could see Europe starting, I guess, from Central Europe in flames once more?
I don't see it.
Thank God.
Yes, I'm still an incurable optimist, despite everything that I know. I think that the majority of the people in Europe would not go that way.
I think that's a very, very good, important point, that there are still moral folks around, no matter where you go. And they always, hopefully, will rise to the top. Folks, the book, The Ghosts of Europe, easy way to get it as always, www.brenthollandshow.com. Our guest today and the author, Anna Porter. Anna, we're going to wrap up now, but I'm going to ask you a question I virtually ask every guest that comes on this show. As you know, this show is syndicated through the University Network from coast to coast to coast. So you're virtually standing at a podium speaking with, say, 1 million students across the country, and because it's on the internet, international students as well. What would you say to them?
Keep the faith. Well, I would say to them that continuing to try to sell democracy, to promote democracy, to be passionate about democracy is really important. I'd say that. And I would also say that if anybody in your hearing makes racist remarks, don't just sit there and smile and try to be socially acceptable, but fight back, because evil can often succeed when good men do nothing. And by good men, I meant good men and women. I was quoting Burke, but it is
Edmund Burke, yeah.
It is important to believe in your principles and speak up.
I think that is absolutely perfect, and I want to thank you once more for such an exquisite book. I look forward to any Anna Porter book because it is so well written and so well researched, and you talked about that passion, and that passion is all through this book, folks. And the book, of course, is called The Ghosts of Europe. Anna Porter, our guest today, journeys through Central Europe's troubled past and uncertain future. Thank you so much for keeping the faith, as you say.